Hey everyone, my name is Danilo Petrovic.
I'm Ilya Marchenko.
I'm Denis Kudla.
I'm Evgeny Donskoy.
I'm Henry Laaksonen.
I'm Peter Torebko, and you're listening to the Game to Love podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Here we are. We're just sort of fresh after the Australian Open. It's all sort of calming down a little bit. So we thought we'd come back and discuss a little bit of Novak Djokovic and his incredible 18th Grand Slam. We've joined with a special guest on this Game to Love podcast. It is John Silk. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me on. Give him a clap.
Hey. Thanks for having John. Me on. Looking forward to this.
No problem, mate. Did you want to let us know? Obviously, we know you as a sort of journalist. You do a lot of different sports, things like that. Working for, I don't know if I'm going to get the name right. I know it as DW.com, but you'll probably tell us the correct pronunciation of the actual company.
Yeah, it's Deutsche Welle, so it's Germany's public broadcaster. I mainly focus on news for them, but I've written books on sport. And I do dabble in a bit of tennis journalism from time to time. Normally, I tend to, if I do stuff at Deutsche Welle, I tend to do like tennis news stories. So whether it be Greta Thunberg and Roger Federer arguing about ecology, or the ATP sort of fallout a bit last year with the Djokovic sort of threatening to break away, which is still sort of brewing. I tend to, if I do tennis, it does tend to be a bit more news related rather than the sport itself, but it's a sport that I've been following and loving for 35 years.
Yeah, and you mentioned you love the sport. Obviously, we've seen you on the Game to Love chat here and there. Big Game to Love fan, hopefully. What sort of got you into liking tennis? And it must be so nice to have a job where you can combine a passion with actually making money as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kid, you sort of, if you have a big sports interest, whether it be tennis or football or whatever in the UK, your sort of first ambition is to become a tennis player or to become a footballer or rugby player. And then when you realise that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's how me and Ben started off. Both wanted to be tennis players, and now we're here drinking beer, exactly. Talking about it instead.
Exactly. I mean, when I was playing tennis as a teenager, I found that I had one or two weaknesses. My serve wasn't really good enough. My volleying was so-so. So was my backhand. And before I realised it, basically that meant I wasn't very good at tennis.
Exactly right.
Basically, my forehand was okay, but that was about it. So then you just go to the next best thing, which is talking about it, writing about it, chatting to your mates in the pub. And in a way, that's a bit like it is going to be this evening, I think.
Yeah, exactly right, man. And that's what we try and bring to our viewers. We try and bring a sort of relaxed view, sort of how myself and JG wanted to, reason we wanted to start it. I love the Peter Crouch podcast and just how relaxed that type of thing is. It's all about football, obviously. I also like the Soccer AM sort of vibe where you've just got a lot of comedy in with the sport as well. So just want to be able to relax, pretend like you're down the pub and you can just have a chat about tennis and have a big argument about who you think's best. Because that's all we ever do. I'm sure you've probably been in many of them as much as me and him have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like your style. I like the way it is. You managed to sort of fuse expertise, interest, passion, knowledge with a little bit of humour and beer.
Yeah, talking about beer, what beer are you drinking today?
So I have a German beer. Given that I'm living in Germany, it would be a crime not to. And it's one called Stortebecher. And it's named after a German pirate, basically, that got his head chopped off.
Interesting.
Yeah. So cheers.
Well, my one doesn't have such a great story. It's just a Heineken, and it was one of the cheapest ones on sale at the shop. So there we go. Look.
It's a good go-to beer, Heineken.
It's a good one. It's a good one for the green screen as well. It just disappears in your hand. I'm just on the standard Duty Stellas. I know that Thomas Rock normally... he's one of the biggest fans of the channel. He likes seeing me rocking the nice Stella Artois. So
nice.
Always have to do him proud.
I'd like to ask you both a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I know you're probably more used to asking your guest questions, but I think with tennis in particular, you can sort of get an idea about someone's age, someone's interest and stuff by asking them who was the sort of first Wimbledon winner when they were growing up. So Ben, I'll start with you. Who was your first Wimbledon memory or Wimbledon winner?
Well, for me, I've said it many times on the podcast, but I was more around the Agassi and the Sampras era. Sampras, probably my favourite player of all time, I'd say. I mean, it's tough to say whether he would have been beating some of the players that are around these days, but just that era of tennis, Sampras and his style of play, it was just what I knew from when I was just younger. Obviously, he won multiple Wimbledon titles, and when you're young and you're British and all you ever know really is grass court tennis, Pete Sampras was at the top of the game, really. And he was just all over your TV screen, so he was just instant go-to. Pete Sampras with his big, like, slam dunking smashes and just big serving, volleying, just all-round game, really. Just great player. And just obviously the big rug, hairy chest every time he did a changeover, which was always funny to see. Don't get many of them these days.
No, you don't, no. What about you, JG?
Well, with me, you'll probably be able to tell from my age by my answer, really. And that is going to be the one and only Roger Federer, really. Growing up, he was the man at Wimbledon. Just seeing him dominate, really. He was so good there. So many brilliant memories watching him on the screen. It was always like, I remember at school time, I used to watch it during school. And it was always like a big hope, can we see an English guy do well? Never happened. So I feel like most people just in England supported Roger Federer because he was like the favourite going into a lot of the Wimbledons. And a lot of people were just sort of willing him always to win. The Wimbledon crowd, they clap him as if he is British, to be fair. And yeah, for me, he is my memory of, like, he is Mr. Wimbledon.
Yeah. Funny enough, you talk about British players. I guess from kind of 2001 onwards until Murray probably, Michael sort of came along in the mid-2000s, but probably wasn't really a threat until the latter sort of part of the decade. There was that sort of 5 years, I guess, post-Henman and pre-Murray, where there really was no British threat on the men's or the women's, of course.
No.
And I think that's the sort of period where I was really sort of getting to like love tennis. And that's when really, if there's no one else really to support, obviously there's other players, but it was just Federer. He was the one who it was hard to go against. And then later on, it was more like people used to love Tsonga as well at Wimbledon. He always brought a big thing. And then obviously Djokovic as well, what he's done there. But that's all recent years.
So, JG, how did you sort of move towards becoming a Nadal fan? Because confession time, I'm also a Nadal fan, so I hope it doesn't become too biased this evening.
Oh, that's interesting.
But how did you so you sort of remember Federer? Maybe he was sort of one of your early sort of memories. How did you transition to becoming a Nadal fan?
This is weird. I feel like I thought it's weird. All the questions. No, I like it, but I just wasn't ready for this. It was, to be fair, in England, you'll know, ITV4, they have a lot of coverage of Roland Garros and the French Open. So, like, it was just always on the TV as well, along with Wimbledon, which was on BBC. And I remember just always really being fascinated by the clay courts. Never played on one, even now. Never played on one, which is like super disappointing for me. And then Rafa Nadal, he's just always been the guy on the clay courts of Roland Garros. If you've watched a lot of that tournament, and I loved the intensity of it in terms of it was always like a bit of a battle and like a mental sort of game rather than the other tournaments. I know they all are. I feel like it's more of a slogging fight on the clay, and I just loved the dynamic of it. And with Rafa as well, he's just a bit of an idol. Then when I was a bit older as well, I went to the ATP finals. I remember watching him there. And just seeing him in person, just, I don't know, just always he sort of mesmerised me with his play.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, giving away my age now, when I was growing up, the first Wimbledon champion I remember was Boris Becker. That shows you. So, 85, 86, they were sort of the first. I mean, we're all three of us are from the UK, so apologies to our international audience who have more interest maybe in Australia or the French or New York in terms of majors. But really, for the first sort of 5 or 10 years of being interested in tennis, for most British people, it is just Wimbledon. And so as a result, Becker was this sort of guy from nowhere. He was popular. He was charismatic. He would be flying around the court. He spoke good English. And, of course, we see him now and hear him a lot more on BBC TV. But, and so when it was him and Edberg, I was always on Becker's side. And he was the main one. There was some great women's tennis around at the time, some great women's finals. Sabatini, Graf. Obviously was the main one. She sort of took over from Navratilova at the time I was getting into tennis. I remember possibly the most vivid Wimbledon final from growing up. I was now a teenager, would be the Novotna Graf final, where Novotna sadly blows 2-break lead, I think she had in the third set, and ends up crying, of course, and there's the royal family, trying to console her. And this was a very strong image, I would say, for British sport in a way in the 90s. Yeah. And unfortunately, Novotna obviously went on to go and win Wimbledon, which was just great for her and great for tennis. And then moving on through Henman. Henman was really the hope. I don't know if you sort of were on the Henman bandwagon.
Yeah, definitely I was. I was totally... every year it would come round and you were just hoping. Every single year you were just hope. And you only got those semi-finals. Then we have the one that we all know, the famous rain delay against Goran Ivanisevic, when obviously it's the big story was Ivanisevic really winning the whole thing. But that was his chance really for Henman, and he was looking so good. And then the rain delay completely screwed him. There was no roof then. They had to play it the next day, and then Ivanisevic came back playing so much better again. Wiped him off the court.
Possibly with tennis more than any other sport, I would say. I'm someone who's passionate about many different sports, but tennis is up there. And I think momentum is so crucial in tennis. We saw it with Nadal Tsitsipas last week. Once the momentum swung in Tsitsipas's direction and Nadal seemed to lose a bit of confidence, and Tsitsipas was just everything he hit was turning to gold. And we see it so much, particularly when the two players are quite level in terms of abilities, if you like. And that semi-final between Ivanisevic and Henman, for those listening and watching that aren't aware, was basically pretty much going Henman's way. One-way traffic would be an exaggeration. I think it was 2-1 when the rain hit. So, but Henman's on top, and Henman is, within touching distance of the final. Rain comes along, and there we go.
Cursed by his own weather from his own country.
Typical, really, mate. It's always going to happen with a British guy. But one thing I want to ask you, John, is actually on the subject of momentum. You was talking about it there and how important it is in tennis, more so than other sports. With tennis, what is your attitude on the use of medical timeouts? In certain situations, medical timeouts.
He's already
some
going
people,
for it.
I'm interested to know what John thinks. There's a lot of people, they'll sort of put forward a medical timeout when there's a lot of questions about their injury. Are they injured? I'm talking about multiple players here. A lot has been done for many years.
We saw two, didn't we? We saw two recently in the recent tournament. We had the Shapovalov one,
one of the worst
2 sets all against Sinner, helped him win, and then we had Karolina, was it Mukova against Ashley Barty?
Yep.
She took one and she was a set and a breakdown, and then she suddenly came back and won after that. So,
and the weirdest thing with that one, she didn't disclose any information as to what was going on. Like usually there has to be some kind of, it's my ankle, it's my knee, or I feel dizzy, I've got nausea or something. Nothing, just completely nothing. It's very rare you see that. She comes back on court, brushes a daisy, wipes it. I'm into the semis.
Yeah, exactly. Having watched Sinner and Shapovalov with you guys with a watch-along, I had it on the TV, but I was tuning into you guys, so I know exactly where JG stands on all of this.
I know.
I know how outraged you. I think it was Shapovalov.
Yeah, it was Shapovalov,
Yeah, exactly. So, listen, this will probably be a nice segue into Djokovic, because not just injuries in the match, but also post-match. And I commented on this with a friend of mine who's a passing tennis fan, if you like, and just trying to talk about the comparisons between tennis and other sports where there's this cloak and dagger element to injuries and secrecy and not wanting to reveal too much, and then starting to make out things about how it's a private issue. And yeah, sure, we get that. When it's your child who's got a particular illness, that's fine. But we're talking about competition here where you're using it to your advantage or disadvantage. Is the case.
I believe that was Azarenka, was it not? Azarenka come out and she said after the thing, I don't want to talk about my issues, what's going on. It's a private thing.
Right. Well, Djokovic said something similar, I think, as well. And there was a really nauseous question he got from a Serbian journalist, which went along the lines of, listen, Novak, we all think that this is your issue. It's a private matter, and we understand that. Don't you agree, Novak? And Novak went, yeah, that's exactly what I think. But it was a really, anyway, but the point is that when you start using it for a competitive advantage, well, then we're playing a slightly different game there. We're not talking about a sick teenager or even a particular injury that might cause embarrassment. We're now talking about competition. And in tennis, unlike many other sports, you can use an injury to your advantage because it's going in your opponent's head. Your opponent's thinking, okay, he's struggling a bit, so I'm going to change my game. I'm not going to play as aggressively. Maybe I'm going to go more to that side. So coming back to your point about taking a break, yeah, players do use it to their advantage, and probably some do it unfairly and more so than they should. But I guess you've also got to deal with it as the opponent, and so I'm sitting on the fence there a bit. But I do find it frustrating, and I do think that certain players are doing it. I mean, I don't know if you remember that interview with Roddick from about 15 years ago, where he's talking about Djokovic's injuries, and he's listing all these different symptoms and injuries that Djokovic supposedly has. So regarding Djokovic, it's something that's been following him for 15 years, and I think there's a reason for that. But let's also put some good light on Djokovic and his injuries. He does still prevail. And I think the injuries are real. I just wonder if that was bad. I mean, he said he had a tear. I'm still not sure. He then said in his interview after the Aussie Open win, he said it'll all come out in the documentary. Well, the documentary is a Novak Djokovic production that's going to be producers and everybody at his behest. So I don't think we're going to get a true. It's not going to be an undercover thing where we're actually going to find something out. It's going to be very much favourable to Djokovic, as interesting as it may be. So, I don't know if that's... I have kind of sat on the fence, JG. I do think tennis players do use it. I do think it's a bit naughty. But, everyone's going to try and gain every advantage they possibly can.
Do you think it's similar? Because I think it's such a difficult thing to sort of jump on the back of certain players, and it can be the same thing.
Well, you can't police it, can you? You can't be like, you've been doing that, you're faking it. What can you do? You can't do anything about it.
This is what I was going to use the comparison is if your team is going to win the Champions League and then one goes in the area and gets a little tap on the leg and goes, "Aye!" and falls down in the box, you go, yeah, that was a penalty. And you argue to the end of time to the other fans, he got touched and that's a penalty. But if you're on the other end, that was never a penalty. He's cheating. But it's the same thing in this respect. If you support Djokovic, you'll be like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. He might actually be injured. Whereas if you're against him, he's a complete faker and he's using it and he's breaking the rules. So it's just a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other for me. I don't know whether I don't really have that much of a problem with it because everyone can do it. If you want to disrupt him back, do it back to him. I don't know.
I do think that's a really interesting comparison with football to some extent because actually I think that now with this Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, particularly Djokovic and the other two, if you like, given the romance there is between Rafa and Roger.
Federer.
But Federer, exactly. Even the fans probably don't go at each other, those two, so much. They sort of aim most of their eye towards Djokovic. But I've noticed that with this sort of three, more than ever in my lifetime, at least, of watching tennis, that fans are more ardent than ever. That it has almost come into that sort of team and identity thing. If you're from a Balkan country, by the way, they are quite united in their support for Djokovic. So the Bosnians are on board and the Croats are on board as well. Surprisingly, given some of the let's call it rivalry between the countries, if you like.
Yes.
When it comes to football as well, they want to beat each other. But actually, they're all on board with Djokovic. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it comes to opinions on vaccination or a herbal diet or winning Wimbledon. They will back their man, and arguably so will Spanish fans and fans of Nadal and Federer too. And it has become a bit more tribal, I think, in the last 10 years
certainly.
with these three.
Yeah, it definitely has. I know it's just one of those things you take your pick and pick at your own peril, I think.
I think that's why Ben gets criticised a lot on the podcast, because everyone's always going at him in the chat saying, who's the guy you support? Who's the one you support? When Ben generally doesn't have one who he looks at and thinks, I really feel a connection to. He sees it with a level playing field. I try and see from that perspective too, but I'm always going to have some Rafa glasses on to a certain level. I try not to, but I always will.
I mean,
I'm going to heap praise on Djokovic at various points today. So, and it's impossible not to after 9 Australian Opens.
Everyone has to. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Australia, because obviously he's just been there, just won his 9th one. That's 18 Grand Slams now. Coming into the tournament, he was the favourite. However, people saying Medvedev can really challenge him. I, for one of the first people to say I thought Medvedev was going to win this whole tournament from the beginning. Going into the final, I still thought he was going to win. Just wasn't to be. Completely got obliterated in the final. His journey towards the final wasn't straightforward. There was times where he's going to a 5th set. He looks down and out. He looks injured. He's struggling. But what a fighter and what a tennis player to be able to, when the chips are down at times, he just plays his best tennis. We keep saying it time and time again, me and Ben. If he's under a bad situation, 30 or is facing break points, match points, break points, whatever it is, big serve, big unreturnable one. He's just unbelievable, the guy, and you can't admire his greatness right now. You've got to admire his greatness. I mean,
yeah, have to, mate.
I mean, those three that we talk about day in, day out. I do think he's got something that the other two, and particularly Nadal, don't have, which I think is this ability to get round problems, the ability to get over a problem either during a tournament or during a match. And you know, I've already said that I'm a Nadal fan, but something with Nadal there can sometimes be a narrative about the speed of the balls, or the roof being on or not being on, or a certain tweak with an injury, and Nadal likes to have this, or even just a flow of tournaments. In 2019, when he lost to Djokovic in that final, he was beaten up badly in that final. That, the Nadal fans and even the Nadal narrative was that he sort of went into that tournament without too much match practice, and that he was fit by the final, but he hadn't been tested enough. And but he got thrashed at the end of the day in that final. And so with Djokovic, you can have issues with his fitness, with form, and so many other variables. And so I think this is where, when it comes to the Grand Slam race, this is where Djokovic has an advantage, particularly over Nadal. It's like that the variables, he can negotiate them. He will find a way out of trouble. He will find a way round a problem, particularly on any surface that isn't clay anyway. He will often find the solution. That's not to say that Nadal hasn't done an amazing job, and obviously Federer have too, and I think Nadal has changed his game a bit. But we saw at this tournament with Djokovic, his serve is better today than at any point in his career. And it's an unbelievable improvement.
Aces most of the tournament, and I think it was just like credit to him, really. He's one of these players, like you were sort of alluding to with Federer and Nadal. He's one of these players that he can win playing badly more than what they can. I think that he can dig out a win, whereas if Nadal has an off day, you sort of just see everything sort of just starts unraveling pretty quickly, and you just think, it's just one of those days. Nadal had a bit of a bad day. But Djokovic, if he has a bad day, you see him really just digs in. He becomes the wall all of a sudden, and then it's up to the other person to beat him rather than him wiping them off the court. They wipe themselves off the court a lot of the time. So I think he just has that in his locker. Like he has something else they don't, which is this just, I don't know, it's just like this inbuilt, I don't know if it's this Eastern European will and like desire and fight. They have so much grit and determination to get stuff over the line. And I just think that he has that in abundance. And I think that is what's going to take him past them and their Grand Slam titles, to be honest.
JG wants to say something. Go on.
No, I need to just divulge everything Ben's saying right now. But for me, I think you've just got to look at it from the perspective that it depends what we're sort of defining here. Let's not talk about greatness, because if you're looking at greatness for me, I think there's a lot more variables than just statistics.
Yeah.
For me, I want to look at someone who I enjoy watching, and I watch their style of play, and it's the most fascinating, beautiful version of the game. A bit like Barcelona when they was playing so well, winning Champions League. The style of play, there wasn't just winning; there was winning beautifully. And for me, that holds some regard more than just winning.
Yep.
If you look at Djokovic, he can win ugly. You look at Nadal, he can win beautifully. I'll tell you what, when he's hitting them winners and he's whipping them from left to right, no one can do that. Federer can as well. It's just more of a thing of beauty for me. And I admire that a lot in both of them, which something Novak Djokovic has not been able to do, really, in my opinion.
For me, it's a bit more than beauty, JG. It's also take the breath away moments.
Yeah,
where you just go, oh my goodness.
You tell him, John.
What have I just seen? What have I just seen? Did I really see that?
Yeah.
And I do think in a top level match, Wimbledon finals, semi-finals, or Slam finals and semi-finals, you do get more of those oh my goodness moments with Nadal and Federer than you do Djokovic. That's not to say that he doesn't do an unbelievable return of serve like he did on Federer in that semi-final. I think when Federer was a bit bitter after that semi-final, he had nothing to lose. Do you remember that in the US Open about 8-9 years ago? I think it was. So he does take the breath away as well, and there's a lot to admire. And I think with Djokovic, again regarding the final on Sunday, it wasn't quite take the breath away moments, but he was hitting that baseline so often, such frequency. It was insane, and it was constantly a difficulty. So we would see maybe what we would class as an unforced error from Medvedev, but it was kind of forced.
It kind of was. They're not really unforced errors. Who's to define sometimes what even is an unforced error? I kind of find that a bit perplexing.
Mate, Medvedev as well, wouldn't he? Medvedev. Sorry, mate, you go on.
Yeah, that this unforced error is literally a person deciding. So it is subjective. But it's not. Most other things in tennis, are fairly black and white.
Yeah.
You see the stats throughout the match. But this unforced error is literally just somebody going, yeah, that's an unforced error, or that isn't. It really is as basic as that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I totally agree with you, because we all know Daniil Medvedev around the court, he is one of the fastest. He can get to everything, and he can get everything back in play. And it was just testament to Djokovic, I think, that final, that he outworked Daniil Medvedev. He made him run so much and was scampering around the court that he was hitting unforced errors. I don't think you can say they're all Medvedev's fault. His backhand, Djokovic, is just probably the best in the game. He could create any angle he wants with it. He can put it down the line. He can put it short. And everything just seemed to be going right for him in that final. He seemed like he wasn't hitting it with everything, but he was hitting it with just enough to push it into the right places. And Medvedev didn't seem to have the answers. And as soon as the mental side went, you saw that he started smashing his racket. He was looking up in the crowd, and that's it. You're done. If you do that against Djokovic, you're done. You can't show that weakness.
I thought Djokovic was incredible. This is one of the best versions of Djokovic we've seen, to be honest. And the reason I think it's really scary, is the fact that the way he's serving now is probably one of the best I've seen as well. So if you talk about how important serving is to longevity in tennis, it's probably one of the biggest things. If you're serving well, you can play for many years to come, which sort of leads nicely into talking about the Grand Slam race. Obviously, right now, you've got joint number one, Roger and Rafa, both 20 Grand Slams. Djokovic, 18 now, so only 2 behind. It's a matter of time, isn't it, before Djokovic catches him?
Djokovic is probably the favourite right now, but it swings and moves. I mean, probably a week ago, or 8-9 days ago, when Rafa was looking at a quarter-final and a potential 21st Grand Slam. Although I think hand on heart, and maybe it was the same for you, JG, I never thought Nadal would win the Aussie Open.
No, never. Not for a moment.
No, there were sort of some sort of tweets and murmurings, and one or two, journalists were talking about it as it went into the second week, and one or two people were even saying, positing, why is no one talking about this? Well, the reason.
Well, maybe it's a lie. Maybe it was slightly then. Maybe about 5%. There was a part of my mind which thinks he's there. Yeah. You never know what could happen if he loses. If he beats Tsitsipas comfortably, which he looked like he was, he's going to be quite fit for this next one. Medvedev could struggle with the occasion a little bit, and we saw Medvedev in the final. At the end of the day, Djokovic was brilliant, but Medvedev, for me, I'm sorry, he kind of did bottle it a bit. I think he's got a lot more higher gears than what he offered. We've seen him play against Djokovic many times before.
We beat him in
Not
straight
too long
sets in
ago.
Nitto, didn't he?
ATP finals, beat him in straight sets. And you can't say that's not a big tournament. I know it's not a Grand Slam, but we saw a different level to him. We've seen a different level for the last year. In the final, I was really quite harsh, I feel like maybe a bit too harsh after the match. But there was more disappointment sort of built up inside of me from him. But he's got so many more levels than that, what we saw.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. Although I'd like to say I think Djokovic just forced him into that. But I agree. I think when he got himself back in the match in the first set, gets it back on serve, gets it to 5-5. I think he netted one, didn't he? I think that basically cost him the first set. He hit one into the net. I think. It was
at 5. It was at 6-5, wasn't it? Trying to force into the tie break, and it went. I think it was love 40. The love 41 was a bit suspect. Hit the net.
You can't give him. Yeah, you can't give him 3 break points on your own
set points.
Anyway, back to the sort of the slam race, and what you were talking about with Nadal, and I mentioned how people weren't really talking about it. Then one or two people were saying, "Why isn't anyone talking about it?" Which then made people talk about it in a way. But I said, well, quite simply with Nadal, the reason why people are not talking about the 21st Slam is as Ben sort of mentioned to some extent, was that there's so many variables now that need to sort of fall into place for Nadal to win the Australian Open, possibly the US and Wimbledon as well. But focusing particularly on the Australian, there's so many things that kind of need to fall into place for Nadal, I think, to get to a final, to win. Maybe a slightly more fortunate draw, not coming across a red-hot team in the quarters like he did last year, managing to put Tsitsipas away. I think he would have been the second favourite against Medvedev in that semi-final, the way that Medvedev had beaten him at the ATP, as you mentioned.
In fact, we both had that semi-final, me and Ben. We both had Medvedev and Nadal reaching there, and we all both had Medvedev reaching the final.
Yeah, right. Although Ben also had Dan Evans as his dark horse, so I don't know if we could always...
Yeah, what was that? I don't know what I was drinking that day.
It was fun.
I also had... Yeah, but don't forget, I also had Dimitrov knocking out teams, so that's my claim to fame for the Australian Open. That's the only one that I can go home happy with, I think. I don't think anyone had Aslan Karatsev in the semis, though.
No, that's true, Aslan. I mean, that's a great story, and
amazing.
And he did okay in that semi-final.
Yeah, he did.
Great. I thought he did well.
He probably pushed him as much as Medvedev did in the final, arguably.
More.
I think more. Yeah, we both said more.
Yeah.
So I think so.
But with Nadal, I just think at the Aussie Open, for example, which probably for Nadal fans, if not Nadal is the one that we all would quite like him to win, because that would give him the 2 Grand Slams at each one. And now that sort of mini race within a race now goes over to Djokovic, because I guarantee you, if you could give Djokovic 1 slam, it would be the French. For him and his fans, because that really... Then when it gets tight in this race, whether it be 2019, 21, whatever they all end up on, and who knows, they may all end up on 20 or may all end up on 21, it'll then start coming down to, well, who got in the most finals? Well, I think most of them are about 28, 29, 30 finals altogether. And then it'll be like, well, who's won? What's the spread, And if you've got 2 French in your locker, unlike, Federer's never going to win a second French. I think even the biggest Federer fans realise that. So then it does come down to that. And, basically this year and probably next year as well, Djokovic will go into 3 out of 4 slams as the favourite. Nadal will go into 1, albeit a fairly heavy favourite. And that's probably why many people, including myself right now, are erring towards Djokovic in the slam race.
But could you not see it from this perspective? The fact that Rafa, he has that one French Open where he's a very strong favourite. Djokovic may be favourite in the other 3, but there's a lot of people along the way who could trouble him. A Dominic Thiem, a Federer coming back, a Medvedev hitting a bit of form. You never know. Maybe a Rublev, if he hits some crazy form, and he's only getting better, Rublev, for me. He could be dangerous in one of the hard court things, especially if he draws in quarterfinals or something. You never know. Personally, I think it's a big ask for like one of these young guys, but a Dominic Thiem, I don't think he's really that young anymore. And he's certainly, if he's on the same side of the draw as Djokovic, I fancy him to beat him half of the time.
At the French Open or the other slams as well?
At the other slams.
Maybe. I would say the French Open, I would give Thiem the the slight advantage of the French because I think he's built for clay and he's actually adapted very well and got better on the hard courts. I think if it's team versus Djokovic, just like anyone on a hard court, or even, by the way, JG, I've got to pick you up on something regarding team. Did I hear somewhere that you were tipping him to win Wimbledon?
Yes. Yes. I said stick with it.
No. Listen. I had to change my thing with this. I spoke to Gil Gross about it, and I was very adamant about the fact that I think he could do it. I've had some time to think about it, and I've not gone for it in my end of year predictions. However, listen to me now. I still would stand by what I said in terms of the fact that you watch something happen. The guy he's not bad. We don't know I don't know too much about what his form is on grass. I'll be honest. I'm not going to be able to reel off loads of statistics, but I've seen how a predominantly clay court player has adapted his game to play on the hard courts. I honestly believe that he is someone who he's got more drive and he works harder than most people on tour. And if he can apply that to say the grass court swing as well, I think he's going to be dangerous. I really do. I don't see many players who are like really brilliant on grass. Obviously, you've got the ones who we've seen historically, but I think there's a gap for it. I really do. And I think watch out for Dominic Thiem. I'm going to bring you on as well, John. If he wins it, I'm going to bring you on for the next podcast.
Please bring me on when he goes out in the second round to Aslan. When he goes out in the second round, bring me on.
If he goes out, you won't be coming on.
Didn't he go in the first round last time? Didn't he, to Sam Querrey?
Sam Querrey, yeah. But let's just see. Okay, you'll call me crazy. I can't wait for Wimbledon to see what Dominic Thiem's going to be doing.
Listen, I mean, I'm a bit older than you guys, but maybe you're very aware of this, that winning Wimbledon and the French as a double, if you like, in the same year, or even just winning the pair in your career, Sampras never won the French, for example, was kind of from beyond Borg, I think, in the early to mid-'80s until I think Nadal, I think no one had won the pair in the same year. I think Nadal in 2008 did it, and maybe in 2010 as well. But it was kind of like, this is just not happening, But I do think the surfaces have changed a bit. We see, Wimbledon in particular. I don't think winning Wimbledon from the back of the court, like we see it frequently nowadays, would be possible in the 90s. That's not to say that these players would. I mean, these players are so good. These three best ones that I think they would have adapted and they would have changed their game. And I mean, that's one thing in Nadal's locker. I think that gives him an advantage over almost anyone on the tour, but certainly amongst the big three. He's the best volleyer amongst the big three.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Agreed.
He's the best at the net. His touch is just insane. And even just at the net in general, we saw in that French Open final, Djokovic seemed to be practicing the drop shot throughout the entire tournament. and it was kind of just working in terms of the fact he was going over the net in the first set, but Nadal was quick enough to get there and dink it back over in an impossible position for Djokovic. That he basically abandoned the tactic, I think, midway through the third set, but by then the match was gone. Yeah. So, and I also heard a great quote from Tony Nadal about 2 years ago.
Uncle Tony.
Talking about he's talking about Thiem and the threat that Thiem was beginning to pose. And he just said, listen, of course, Tony Nadal's biased, but he was saying that his nephew, Rafa, that had just so much more variety in his game to Thiem. And I even think there's an argument to say Rafa, in terms of the surfaces, in terms of the level at each single element to the game. Now that Nadal has improved both his backhand, unbelievable compared to how it was at the beginning of his career, and his serve, that he's probably the most complete player. But that might not necessarily mean he'll win the most slams.
Yeah, I mean, we're always singing his praises about his amazing overhead, probably the best out of all of the big three of hitting over.
Volleying and overheads.
And then that Tsitsipas match, you just saw he hit two that just went awry, and then the whole match unravelled after the overhead went. So that's what we just couldn't believe it. We just thought, this is his bread and butter. This is what we know him to be. And as soon as he misses one of them, I think his whole psyche goes a little bit like, oh my God, just missed an overhead. Then he missed a second one
he did,
consecutively. Yeah. And you're like, oh no, he's not a god right now. This isn't the same person. Strange.
The first one was insane in terms of him missing it. I still can't understand it. The second one is a bit trickier because it's one of those ones that bounces a bit deeper in the court, and he sort of hit it, I think, a couple of centimetres over the baseline. But interestingly, I often like to compare matches that are really similar. And Nadal has now had 3 5-setters of really similar nature. Forget the Fognini one, because that was just crazy, and it was at a time during Nadal's lull, if you like. But he said 3 tennis matches that are almost identical in so many ways. The Wimbledon final of 2008, the US Open final of 2019, and now that Tsitsipas match. Now, the Tsitsipas match had a different result to the other two, but even in that match against Medvedev, he misses an overhead, I think at 2-0, and he may even have been a break. He was certainly a break up at some point during that third set, and he misses an overhead. And you're right, he never misses overheads, and he did lose it mentally for a couple of sets against Medvedev. He fortunately managed to just about bring it back again for the fifth. And the hope, and I think he was tired as well against Tsitsipas. He was fatigued, and he did cramp up in his press conference afterwards. And I think the mistake he makes on a backhand volley, I think it is in the basically the last game of the match, where Tsitsipas ultimately wraps it up. It's a mistake, and you might think it's pressure, but I think it was fatigue. He let that drop too deep. He should have hit it a bit earlier. And I do think he was looking a bit tired in that fifth set. And arguably, you should expect that. It's a 35-year-old against a 24-year-old. But then Djokovic...
And 22, I think, isn't he?
22, sorry.
Yeah, I think he's even younger. That's why it's so crazy.
That's why it's not that crazy, because that's why people... We hold the top big three in such high regard that we're talking that it's crazy that he's lost to Tsitsipas, when it's not. He's 22-year-old versus a 35-year-old. Eventually, in a fifth set, you've got to favour the 22-year-old.
But listen, we need to speak about Federer very, very soon, because you can't have a Grand Slam race and forget him, although it's easy to do so. But regarding Nadal, and I think there's a concerning statistic for fans, as I say, of which I'm one. And I made a note of it the other day, and it's regarding his matches against sort of top 8 players over the last 6 months. Since we came back from the tennis lockdown, if you like. He's played Schwartzman twice. These are obviously over different tournaments, some best of threes. He's lost to Schwartzman once and he's beaten him once. He's lost to Zverev. He's lost to Thiem. He's lost to Medvedev. And he's lost to Tsitsipas. Okay, he has beaten Rublev, Djokovic, and also Tsitsipas at the World Tour Finals. But basically, he's losing about 60% of the top 8 clashes that he's involved with nowadays over 2 different surfaces, one indoor, one outdoor as well, including Paris-Bercy. So when I looked at his run, Fognini, Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Djokovic, albeit at a slam, but at a slam he's only won once, you can see now why many people, including myself, were not really thinking it might happen. Just because that's the problem I think he has on the hard courts. I don't see him winning another hard court slam, if I'm honest.
Oof.
That's a call, isn't it? So you're going to have to get me on here when Thiem wins Wimbledon and Nadal wins back-to-back.
I reckon it's going to be in the same year. It could be in the same year. We'll do it all in one.
I would be delighted to be on here talking about a Nadal winning the US Open Slam, but I really don't think... listen, okay, here's a couple of things that I've said in the last year or so. When he lost to Thiem in the quarterfinals last year, I told a very good friend of mine who's a huge tennis fan, I said, Nadal will not win any more slams apart from the French. And that still holds now, and obviously there's many more years of his career, but I don't think he'll win another slam other than a French. I also said when Federer lost to Djokovic in that final, which can then bring us nicely to Federer, I don't think Federer will win any more slams. I think it's too big an ask now. Hey, we don't know. I could be, as I say, I've nailed my so-and-so to the mast quite a bit this evening on a few things, but I don't see Nadal winning another slam apart from the French, and I don't see Federer winning a slam at all.
Well, that opens the doors up mainly for Djokovic then, doesn't it? He's a Wimbledon favourite and he's hardcourt favourite. And for me, the only way that the others grab a slam is if somebody else knocks Djokovic out for them. And that's it.
Right.
I think that's the only thing. If he meets them in the final, you've got Djokovic's favourite every time, isn't it? Unless it's the French Open.
You're not giving your actual opinion there, Ben, though. You're sitting there at the top of the screen, looking nice and pretty, but you've not given your prediction. Who you think is going to be the guy? Who's going to be the one who's going to end the top of the slam record?
Well, I said already earlier. I said
Djokovic.
Djokovic, yeah, for sure. I think Djokovic has already proven.
Give me a number then. How many is he going to reach?
He's proven in this one tournament alone that this next generation aren't mentally on his level yet, and he's already and he's still improving as well, which is crazy. His serve's better than it's ever been before, and he's still the mental giant of the game. He's the most mentally strong player that's possibly ever played the game. So for me, I reckon he could, if he's got Nadal's got 2 years on him. I think Federer's got like 6 years on him. I think it is something like that. So I reckon if he goes to the age of maybe 38, let's say he gets there without any injuries, he could potentially pick up another like 7 Grand Slams. I reckon Djokovic. I think that's not being too generous. I think that's in reality. If he picks up another Wimbledon, another Australian Open, he potentially could get another like 2 or 3 Australian Opens. I think.
I'm going to say it's probably maybe I'm being a bit conservative, but I'm going to go 22, 21, 20. Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, 22, 21, 20. I wonder if the French Open will become such a certainty for Nadal in the years to come. He'll be favourite this year, but I think Rublev may become a threat in the years to come on
Sinner?
play. Tsitsipas, Sinner. I think it might be a bit too early for him in the next couple of years. I think the Sinner Nadal thing may just literally be, it's going to be 2 or 3 years probably before Sinner is a real threat at a slam. So that might be enough. But so I'm going to say, I mean, it's almost impossible to predict. I mean, after that French Open final, you were thinking Nadal's favourite. Now it's.
I think you've got to look at that French Open final, and for me, I'm going to say something silly probably. I think he's got another 3 years of winning it at the French Open.
Yeah,
I really do.
Easily.
And I can't see why he can't do that. So you had 3 to it already. That's 23. Djokovic has got to get 5 to
I reckon he could get 25, 23, and then Federer. I would love to see him get one more Wimbledon. Maybe we can have a 21 for Federer. Maybe just that one, and then out. See you later.
I mean,
40
I
years
think
old.
On the subject of Federer winning another one, I kind of am tending to agree with John. I don't think he's going to win one. However, I would not be adverse to him winning a Wimbledon. It would be pretty awesome to see it happen one more time. Let's see what happens.
He was 2 points away. 1 point away. He was there. It was in his grasp and that was 1 year ago. Well, I say 1 year ago, 2 years ago now, really, in theory, about 18 months ago. He was still at the top of the game. He was literally there, 1 point away from beating Novak Djokovic in the final. So I think if he comes back to full fitness and he just careful with the games that he picks and just goes around the tour and just doesn't overexert himself, just does like the Williams sisters used to do. Just go and enter the slams and just hand pick the tournaments you're going to be in around the year. You'd probably be not wearing yourself out too quickly. Get the best out of those older years.
By the way, I don't know if this is a bit ominous for his rivals, but Djokovic said that he's going to concentrate on the slams more now.
Brilliant. Well, that's another thing.
Concentrate more on the slams now.
Well, let me just clarify one thing though, quickly, for people listening. I do want to say, my head is saying I think Djokovic will be the leader because you've got to be realistic in terms of he's got a lot more options. If I had to put, say, money on it, if someone said you've got a lot of risk here, you've got to put loads of money on something, I'm putting it on Novak Djokovic because I'm not an idiot. However, my heart's going to say something else completely, and I often tend to follow my heart a lot more in life. So I would love to see Rafael Nadal be the guy who ends it with the most Grand Slams. Do I think it's possible? Yes. Do I think it's likely? No.
He likes being heartbroken. He likes being. I think that's the key there. But for me, the one thing we didn't touch on, which is obviously the Masters titles as well for Novak Djokovic. He's won every single Masters event twice, including the clay ones, and the other two haven't won all of them once, I don't believe. Mm-hmm. I think they're still waiting to complete the full Masters.
Well, I've got some statistics for you, actually, Ben, for all 3 of these on the different tournaments. So if you look at Grand Slams, this is amongst each other. So you look at just Grand Slams alone. This is them playing each other. So 67% of the time, Nadal's won. I think Novak Djokovic had a head-to-head 52%. Roger Federer 32%. So Rafa wins that one in Grand Slams. Move on to ATP Masters. Versus each other, yeah.
Okay.
So you can see that they've played... Rafa Nadal's played 30 times against each other. It doesn't have it individual, unfortunately. He's won 20 of them, lost 10. So that's where he gets 67%. But if you look at the Masters, this is where Djokovic is the best. He's got 56% win record against all of them. But Rafa Nadal is close in second, 51%. Federer, 41%. And then ATP Finals, this is where Roger has his moment. 64% for him. Rafa, 30%. And Djokovic, 55%.
Well, the tour finals, though, don't forget, there's one of them who hasn't even won one of them yet. I don't know his name. Isn't it Rafael Nadal? Got to remember that one. Although it is on his least favoured surface, I think they should do and swap it around a bit. Give him a clay one to have a go at. Come on. Bit unfair to make it always hard court, surely.
But I still think that ultimately the ultimate talking point amongst casual fans, but even big fans like us three, it's still the slam race slightly more.
Weeks at number one as well.
Weeks at number one is something huge as well, and I know it's really important for Djokovic, and that is big. But
1 week away.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got it, Novak Djokovic now. He's 100%. Yeah.
How is it? Is it done and dusted now? I don't think Federer is going to come back and knock him off top spot anytime soon.
No. So, but I know this is important, especially for real tennis obsessives like us. But even for us, I still think if you said give Djokovic another 50 weeks at number one, or give him another 5 slams, and same with Nadal. Really, it's the slam race first. Then,
definitely.
If that slam race is equal, then we might start looking at the others. We'll start going, well, he didn't win ATP, or he won 2 slams here and 4 there, or whatever.
Or the head-to-head between all the players. Yeah, exactly.
But the head-to-heads are fairly, especially. I sort of heard those stats there from JG, and they sort of come and go, if you like. And we see that in slam finals that we can see how it goes. But ultimately, it's going to be especially if there's a couple of slams between them. Let's say Nadal ends up with 24 and Djokovic ends up with 22. That'll be enough of a buffer zone, so to speak, for Nadal fans to say ciao to Djokovic fans, if you like.
Well, maybe, but don't forget Federer fans. They've got lots of claim to fame as well. How many? He has the record of the most semi-finals in a row, isn't it? At Grand Slams. So I can't even remember the actual number of what it was now, but I remember when they announced it at one of the last Grand Slams he got to the semi of, and he was just he's just always there. If he's in a Grand Slam, he's in the semi-final, and he never drops out due to injury, ever. Even if he's injured, he finishes the match. And that is something that you cannot rule out when you're talking about greatest of all time, because you're talking about Djokovic and maybe saying, I've got fake medical timeouts potentially.
There's loads of factors which it's difficult to sort of measure, which you can sort of factor into the fact that who is your greatest. It's not all necessarily who's won the most in the statistics. You can look at loads of different factors.
Exactly.
Say if you're trying to tell me Federer is the greatest of all time, you can look at his record and the fact that his persona and the way he's been known to smash rackets, lose his temper on court. Same with Novak Djokovic. Rafael Nadal, he's never smashed a single racket ever.
Did you hear about why he's actually explained why he hasn't done it in a very romantic way? Nadal said the other day, he said, I didn't do it because I think it would be a bad example for kids.
Yeah. Such a nice guy.
What a good guy.
Why is my mum's favourite player.
and also,
shut up, man.
Listen, there were floods in Mallorca a couple of years ago, and Rafa Nadal was there sweeping up the water. I didn't see Federer there or Djokovic. They were not there sweeping up the water. So
they had a hose pipe.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. It's a great watch, and it's a great debate, and it'll continue being a debate for many years to come.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Long may it continue. But I do think Djokovic is probably the only one of those three that still can put an arm's length to the young pretenders, the next gen. We've seen them do a lot of damage to Nadal now at slams as well as at the Masters and ATP finals. So they are almost on a par with Nadal. If they're playing each other anywhere other than the French, you go, this is 50-50 now. Medvedev plays. Maybe Medvedev's in good form, so you favour Medvedev. Maybe Nadal's got slightly better head-to-head against Tsitsipas, so you favour Nadal. But basically, it's nip and tuck between and Nadal. We can see it in the rankings. Nadal is vulnerable. Nadal could easily end this year at number 4, number 5 in the world. He could also end the year at number 2 or even close to Djokovic.
Well, I heard something quite interesting that I was listening to earlier, and they were saying that Rafael Nadal is famously the greatest number 2 of all time, because he seems to always be number 2 behind Federer and the greatest number 2 behind Djokovic. And he's not spent too long as the number 1. He's obviously there. He's been there for a long time, but he's famously always been sort of behind those two guys in that second spot, but still winning a lot of stuff. but just he's
I
always.
think he's been inside the top 10 for longer, though, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's definitely been. He's always there, but he's all. It's just for some reason Federer and Djokovic have just sort of just been that little bit above him all the time, but he's been still picking up the slam like the French, like consistently. It's just
both Djokovic and Federer sort of go on a bit like Medvedev at the moment to some extent. They can both go on amazing runs of 6 months of just being unbeatable. Also picking up 3 slams in a year. The year when that could or should have happened with Nadal was 2009 because he wins Australia. Gives him a chance then to win 2 or 3 slams that year, but then he gets injured. He's struggling. I think it's in Madrid, and he sort of just gets past Djokovic in a match where he's picked up an injury. He then takes that into the French Open, where he ends up going out to Soderling in the 4th round.
I know.
And that's
don't forget,
year, really.
Don't forget Djokovic is obviously holding all 4 Grand Slams at the same time as well. So that's like something that surely needs to be taken into account into all of these things as well, because that's such a difficult thing to have. And even obviously he's only got that one French Open, but he's sort of to have it at that one period of his career, incredible. And that's another thing I think that we don't give enough credit to these players for as well, is how well, like someone like Rafael Nadal, I probably, even myself, I think I wrote off his career about 10 years ago through knee injury. And the fact he had those real knee problems, I didn't see him even come playing tennis again. And the fact he's come back to the top of the game is such testament to him. And Djokovic had his problems as well. Obviously, Federer, not so many problems, but
Federer's having them now, though, and that's why it comes like it's an interesting topic. Is what do people think he can do when he comes back? Me and Ben have both said that we actually do believe he could maybe nick us a Wimbledon, but that's more hopeful more than anything. We know you don't think you're not so keen on that, but do you think we're going to see him sort of compete in sort of Masters and in Grand Slams? Is he going to be thereabouts, like always, quarterfinals, semi-finals?
I mean, I think nicking at Wimbledon is a great expression, because I think that's really the only way that he probably could. I mean, we did see a period when Djokovic and Nadal were sort of off form, sort of 16, 17, 15 to some extent, and Nadal got injured at the Aussie Open, where Federer was there just sweeping up because there was no one else to win these slams. But that's not the case anymore. That even if Djokovic and Nadal both have an off Wimbledon, I think Medvedev could well be a threat there this year, and maybe Tsitsipas too.
Andy Murray.
It's a bit sad in a way what's going on at the moment.
What did you make of it all? I just wanted to pick your brain on Andy Murray, really, and his sort of coming back from injury. I mean, it's really super sad. Probably the person I've cheered on the most on the tour over recent years, due to us not having, we only had Tim Henman, and as soon as he disappeared, we had a sort of hiatus, and then it was Andy Murray, and it was just willing him towards the first Grand Slam, then towards the first Wimbledon, and just super sad now. Ever since he had that documentary out, I just feel like brought me to nearly tears, mate, watching that. It was horrible. Yeah. So sad. But what do you think of his odds of him coming back to the top of the game? What do you reckon his ceiling is now?
I mean, he'll get a wild card at Wimbledon if nothing else. So he'll be there, I guess. Regarding the whole thing, hey, listen, if he wants to keep playing and people want to watch him, and you know, he did win that tournament. Where was it? He won at Antwerp. Was it about 15 months ago? Yeah. So there's something from that, and he beat Zverev, of course, in the Cincinnati Open. Yeah. So he'll be clutching at. He's clutching at those, and they're not bad things to clutch at, but he's really clutching at them. I think the best. This is maybe really. And hey, listen, this is another thing you can play back in a year or so's time. Best he can hope for is a second week at Wimbledon, maybe. But that's really going on a crest of a wave, and
we're not going to be playing that one back. I agree 100%, and I think that's that's happening.
Harsh, JG is. But you saw him at the US Open. He gave us something to cheer about. At least that 2 sets to love comeback against.
I'm talking
Nishioka.
More recent though, Ben. I watched him last night. Was it last night against Gerasimov? And it was close to being a bagel, to be honest. Gerasimov, we know he's a good player inside the top 100, but he should not be in the same league as Gerasimov. No offense to him. You'd expect him to be able to beat him comfortably. It's not going to happen for him. At the end of the day, he's got a metal hip. And I just don't see... He's 29 years old, I think, Andy Murray.
No, he's
No,
33. 33 or 34.
34. He's older, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not going to... Sorry.
By the way, listen, even more importantly than anything we've discussed already, whether it be Grand Slam races or majors or Federer coming back, how's Diego Schwartzman getting on at the Diego Schwartzman Open that's designed for Diego Schwartzman to win in his own country? I mean, basically,
can't lose,
if you say to Diego Schwartzman, listen, can you design a tournament? Okay, he's going to go, okay, let's have it in Argentina, let's have it on clay, and let's have a bunch of nobodies and a couple of sort of 15
I'm not having it.
Well,
we're not having it. We're big Challenger fans, John. You can't be calling them.
Can't be doing that to these Challenger players. They're ATP players now.
I mean, I know it's Cordoba. Is it called the Cordoba Open? Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it should just be called the Diego Schwartzman, exhibition.
Listen,
he's up against
we did the
next.
bracket and we both had Schwartzman to win. I think everyone had Schwartzman to win.
Cecchinato next, mate. It's a big match.
Okay. I'm being a bit harsh, but is there anyone in the top 20 there?
Benoit Paire? No, he's outside now, isn't he?
Yeah, but Benoit Paire is not like... If you could pick any player who's higher ranked and put him in the tournament, then Schwartzman would have picked him as well.
He's just gone for a holiday, I think, Benoit.
Don't blame him, Don't blame him.
I don't think he's gone for any other reason. He's going to be in those Speedos again, posted on Instagram. I don't know. He's just fallen off the wagon. I think he had Corona, but I don't think that's any excuse for those terrible results that he's been having. He had a good match against Fognini in the ATP Cup, which was entertaining. It was half terrible tennis and half great tennis, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he can produce great tennis if he really wants to. Doesn't ever looks like he really wants to, though. He's just nonchalant.
Regarding upcoming tournaments, Rotterdam looks like it's got an amazing lineup. But Rafa's on the bill at the moment for Rotterdam at the beginning of next month.
Yes.
Do you think he'll play?
It's also isn't it? Well, I'm not so sure. But I don't know. It's with these. It's hard to really know what's going to be happening. I think we're in such weird times as well. It's not really been a normal tennis cycle for the last year or so. So I'm just going to take it as it comes. It's all a bit of a mess, but it would be great to see a really strong field. But quickly, just to go back to Cordoba, because there's a few players I want to sort of point out to you, John, right now. Because I think you need to watch out for them. One of them, Thiago Monteiro. He's a very dangerous one. Brazilian guy. I think he could be a bit threatening. Watch out against him if he faces Schwartzman. He's certainly not an easy one. And then two players we're playing right now as we speak. Correa, Cerundolo. They're both Argentinian, back in Argentina, obviously.
Close, that match.
And it's a close match between them. Can't really separate. Whoever wins out of them, I think Correa, Schwartzman will handle quite comfortably. But Cerundolo is the surprise package. Young Argentinian guy, and he could be dangerous. He's the new Schwartzman from Argentina.
Mate, he's definitely, you want to keep your eye out for that guy. He's got a brother out there. Don't confuse him with Juan Manuel Cerundolo. This guy's only lost about 4 matches in his last about 30 or 25 matches. So he's on a bit of a run, pretty much all on clay courts. He had a little bit of an Australian Open qualifying on the hub, but he's predominantly clay. Really, really good player, though. Keep your eye out for him. He's 135th in the world at the minute, and he's playing, fellow Argentinian Correa.
These are some nice stories, but I don't think you've won me over with thinking that Schwartzman might win a trophy.
We've all got Schwartzman as well, we'll be honest. If it's big ask, but just watch out for some of these young Argentinians. And Montero, a bit of experience, he's a bit of a fighter. We've seen him, we watched him against Carlos Alcaraz Garcia recently, and he beat him quite comfortably. And he's a dangerous guy, this Montero.
I see the Rotterdam thing, obviously going ahead, and probably most of these players. I mean, I would think it's about now that you're going to have to pull out of Rotterdam if you're going to be pulling out, because it's supposed to be starting, I think, on Monday, or Tuesday.
Yeah, so, March 1st.
March 1st, exactly. So hopefully that, goes ahead with the field that they say they will. It's Miami that's probably the one that most will probably slack off, I would have thought, which is at the end of March. I mean, I know Florida's got a slightly different attitude to many parts of the world regarding the virus. And
there'll be packed stands there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you've got Australia, you've got 2-week lockdown and staying in the hotel and not being able to leave. And Florida's taken a very different attitude towards the virus. So, but I still don't see Miami being the normal Miami, if you like, in terms of the players that are going. And then we're looking at, how do you see the clay court season going? How do you see, I mean, Djokovic has already spoken about how he's probably going to not do so many Masters now in the future. I guess he'll probably do 2 of the 3. I mean, when I say
need
3,
to.
I mean, I think he might do Rome, given that he won it last year and blah, blah, blah. He'll probably do Monte Carlo. Rome, Monte Carlo, and the French is what? That's
I'm excited to see Monte Carlo back. That's probably one of the tournaments where I'm really missing. Obviously, alongside Wimbledon as well. That's the big one. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. So whereas I see Rafa still going for it on clay, if only to... he doesn't need the ATP points, but it's still nice to fend off. You don't want to be going in strange halves of draws where you've got to go through 2, 3, 4 big players to get to Grand Slam final. So he's going to want to stay in that top 4 at the very least this year. And a good clay court season should just about do that. So I'm guessing Rafa will do all 3 of Monte Carlo, Rome and Madrid. It's a lot to look forward to.
I think Team as well. Hopefully we see Team there because it'd be interesting to see his battle against, say, a Rafa Nadal.
Yeah, and I think the team thing is something we mustn't forget. I mean, I know we've got used to him doing very well on hard courts, but I still think clay is his best surface. I think he went into that French Open just jaded. And I think what we saw with Team at the French Open is one of the reasons Rafa didn't go to New York. I really think that was something... Listen, Nadal was talking about certain things of going on in the world and blah, 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 and he's absolutely right to say that. But we all know if New York was clay, he's there. New York was a clay. He's there every day. He's there 2 weeks before, So his reasoning made sense, but he was really thinking, I need to put my eggs all in the French Open basket. I do wonder if the woman who received the tennis ball in the neck from Djokovic, she's going to be a future godmother to Rafa Nadal's kids, no doubt.
Probably.
That's certainly kept him away in terms of the Grand Slam race to some extent. But it's going to.
He would have won that.
Yeah, he would have done. Yeah, I think this. Yeah, this very, especially the way we saw the final. I mean, it was a very exciting final. But when we talk about levels, it was really 1 mile away.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I know.
It was exciting and dramatic, but it was nowhere near a Djokovic, Nadal, or Federer kind of level. So.
No,
but hopefully we get a good season this year. Obviously, this time last year was basically when it all, like a souffle just sort of went down, and hopefully it's something. I mean, what's the score with Wimbledon? We're looking at fans at the moment.
I think so. Ben's quite negative on the whole thing. I think we're going to see fans.
How do you say I'm negative? All I follow is what the things that pop up on my screen from the news. You said,
what did we say about the thing with news? Basically, Ben's a negative. He's a negative person with news, so his laptop knows it. So every day when he's working, he'll have news stories come up: man stabbed, man poisoned, man eats his wife. So he has all of these stuff. What pops up, and obviously he's going to have no fans at Wimbledon pop up. On mine. They've got festivals at Wimbledon happening because I think there's going to be fans. I think there's not going to be a maximum capacity, but I really do believe it. The Prime Minister of the UK, they've said that we're coming out of lockdown potentially for June. He's set an end date, and there's going to be no restrictions.
They came out straight after he released that, and they said there was all these news articles saying, I think he's he's really given people far too much hope there with that, and he's probably just... I don't know, he keeps building everybody up to let them down. At least build them up slowly so that there's not a big,
Ben, we need something to cheer about in the UK. We need something to look forward to.
Yeah, but it's not something to cheer about if it doesn't happen. Yeah, but if it doesn't happen, it's not something to cheer about. All he does is gets your hopes up, and then you go, so in May, and everyone's like, May's coming, and then it doesn't happen.
It's happening. We're going to have fans there. And I'm going to be the first fan in. I'm the first one in.
Mate, well,
This is turning into question time more than
exactly. Well, I think we can't go. We're going to end up just rowing about pandemic stuff, which we don't want to do. I think we should wrap it up there. I think it's been an awesome podcast.
It really has.
Really appreciate having you on, John. Did you want to promote any bits you've got going on right now?
Honestly, no.
No.
I mean, I'm basically doing my day job, which is, as I say, working for Deutsche Welle in Germany. But I had a book out last year, but it has nothing to do with tennis. So
nice.
Unless there's some big football fans out there that want to buy Even the Defeats, which is probably the best football book ever written, and I wrote it. So you can buy that. But I do have a plan for a tennis book, but it's still in its infancy at the moment, so I can't even really talk about it too much. But I do have an idea for a tennis book, and if it does come to fruition, I'll be banging down the Game to Love podcast door once again for an appearance.
No, that's awesome, mate. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on. It was really interesting talking to you. Me and Ben, I'm sure we both really enjoyed it. It was brilliant, honestly. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Thanks for having me on.